Hi, I'm Melinda Kucsera, your indie fantasy author, and today Nathan Hartle is joining me to talk about his epic fantasy book, Summoning and Sacrifice. So let's get into it. I've got questions already. Welcome, Nathan. Tell us about
Thank you.
Summoning and Sacrifice.
Well, I'm going to read the blurb because I think I said it best.
Go ahead.
A hunted woman, a missing god, the adventure of a lifetime. All that Shada desires is peace and freedom. What she has is fear and hunger. She's a servant on the run from her cruel master who's determined to lock her away. Then comes a chance at a new life. Alone in the vast, cruel city of Ronia, she meets the lady. This enigmatic spirit makes her an offer. Shada can accept her dismal lot, or undertake a quest to find Ronia's vanished god. For the gods disappeared without a trace in the long-ago age of legend, leaving the worlds of humans to chaos and war. Without its god, Ronia's once mighty empire is crumbling toward an abyss. To save their people, Shada and her ragtag companions will journey to the ends of the universe, but first they must escape Ronia alive. Many in this city of blades, poison, and shadow mean to stop them at all costs. If they fail, slavery or death await them, and their world will fall into darkness.
Oh wow! I mean,
So
there's some serious stakes there. They can't not do the thing. They can't not find this god, or some serious things are going down. All right, let's meet the characters. Let's go into an excerpt, and then we'll talk about everything you just mentioned.
Okay. Yeah, there's a lot. Let me
sure.
pull this in. Okay, chapter 1. Shada pulled the door open just enough to slip quietly through the entrance, as if hoping the door itself might overlook the disturbance. Escaping the midday sun into the damp breath of the temple's interior left her temporarily blind, waiting for the rainbow of spots before her eyes to dissolve in the dim candlelight. Before entering, she had dropped a coin into the tray of this temple's guardian, a sightless beggar in a dark cloak grayed with dirt. The tray was otherwise empty, a good sign that the temple was deserted. Now, as the gloom receded into visible forms, she saw no hint of life. She walked toward the front of the chamber, pausing at the edge of the floor-spanning carpet to leave her shoes behind. Shadows groped from alcoves on either side, where sacks of flour and donated goods waited for those needier than she yet was. She stopped in front of the great altar and sank to her knees. The rug here was threadbare and full of holes, worn and stained by centuries of knees and of tears. The vaulted ceiling curved down to merge with the wall behind the altar. Spanning that surface were carvings too intricate to discern in the flickering light. Sculptures of beasts and spirits sprang from wall and ceiling, reaching for the viewer with bared claws and inscrutable eyes. The dazzling activity surrounded an empty space behind the altar, a vertical stretch of flat, blank stone. Shada crossed her arms over her chest, placing a palm on each shoulder, and bent over, touching her forehead to the rug. Feeling awkward in the unfamiliar pose, she closed her eyes, reached into the tempest that was her mind, and searched for her remorse. First, she would reflect on her sins. Later, she must find a priest and confess them. Her decisions over the last few hours gave her much to regret, fleeing Bridgeby's house most of all. She had no prospects for more work, but regret was a selfish, material emotion. Unhappily, she found little actual guilt inside herself, and without that, she could offer nothing to the goddess. Hadn't she come here for more than a place to hide? She must stay out of sight either way. Bridgeby's men might search for her all afternoon. Unable to focus on her prayer, she spoke it aloud. Well, here I am. Speaking casually in prayer was unusual, but it relaxed her. I'm really lost now. I've got no job and nothing put away. I suppose you've heard this before. Describing her predicament aloud made it real. Her stomach lurched like a runaway wagon. She pressed her face against the rug. Tell me what to do. Absorbed in her prayer, she did not hear the man until he stood behind her. He growled. It was guttural, a sound a throat makes before the tongue carves it into words. She had jumped up and put several paces between herself and that sound before its echo died away. When she saw the stranger, she almost ran. She saw immediately that he was from off-planet, and he was one of the changed at that. Not in the most sunken bowels of Undertown had she come face to face with someone so profoundly altered. He dwarfed her in every way. The leather armor that covered his torso and hung in strips from his waist could have encompassed her several times over. His belt held a scabbard and a holster, but both were empty. That meant he had surrendered his weapons to the Guardian. It was an encouraging thought, and she hung onto it dearly. But it was not his garments that held her attention. Shada was consumed by the sight of his face, which was that of a dog. Not of a domesticated dog, one of the small, delicate things that rode in the seats of expensive carriages in the city's parks. This was a visage like a wild creature from the mountains, wreathed in brown fur and long in snout, with eyes undulled by proximity to society. Her mouth struggled to form words and her mind to form thoughts. She fought angrily to pull herself together. She pinched the sides of her skirt and dipped formally. "Good afternoon to you, sir. May I help you?" In her ears, the beating of her heart nearly drowned out her voice. The stranger acknowledged her by repeating his first noise. It was an urgent sound, full of meaning, but completely inscrutable. She could read nothing in his face or posture. He simply towered over her like a battlement. Whatever far-off world was home to his branch of humanity, it must have been terrifying. Unlike many others, he seemed unbothered by the dark, decorative markings that covered Shada's face. Since he had done nothing overtly threatening, she decided it was safe to leave. "Well, I'm afraid I must be on my way." She began walking, tracing a long circle around him and toward the door. "Good day to you." His grunt was sharp and forceful, a command. Shada froze. Her veneer of calm threatened to crumble as every bit of her body rebelled. She had no reply. She did not know whether to face him or run, just like with Bridgeby. But she would not fall apart in front of him. Struggling to keep the tremor out of her voice, she turned to face the stranger. "Sir, I wish I could help you, but your speech is unfamiliar to me. I know little of off-world languages. A temple priest should be along soon, and he cut through her words with another grunt. The volume and depth of his voice silenced her. He held forward a metal box, oblong and standing upright like a lantern. His mighty arm and armor had hidden it until now. He held it low, at the level of her chest, as if presenting it to her. The box's design was as unfamiliar as the man who possessed it. It caught the candlelight with a glint like steel. Its panels met to form odd lines and curves that both attracted and repulsed the eye. On the side facing her was a door with a small handle. The man reached down, took the handle between two fingers, and pulled the door open. A storm filled the box. Shada might have been looking down on a chaotic gray sea. The churning, almost mass shimmered in the temple's dim light. Shada's mouth hung open. She forgot to breathe. Dear goddess, what is that? The storm's surface cohered into a shape roughly like a human face. Cavities that might be eyes hung above a nose-shaped ridge and two swells like lips. Shada watched, numb. It was all too much and too strange. She asked the face, "Who are you?" Her heart jumped as the storm billowed out of the box. It reached her in an instant and swirled around her in a great cloud. Her skin tingled as if exposed to blowing sand. After the initial surprise, she felt strangely calm. Whatever magic or witchcraft was here, she clearly could not escape it by running. Whatever this box portended, the tall stranger had not assaulted her as she feared. Next to that threat, a box full of sorcery was almost bearable. In her ears, a roar like distant wind rose into words. The voice had no clear gender, no recognizable accent beyond a humming monotone. It sounded like the thousands of dead in the catacombs beneath the temple, whispering in unison. Stories told of gods adopting physical shapes, even clouds and sandstorms. "Do you hear me?" The words came into being within her ears, meant only for her. If the tall stranger heard them, he did not react. Yes. She asked no more questions. In the world of dreams, curious things needed no explanation. The tingling sensation which had spread under her clothes to affect her entire body paused on the verge of entering her nostrils. It shifted, intensifying around her ears. "Do not be afraid," the voice continued. "I have come with a message for you and for all Ronia. It is time for you to reunite with your goddess. She will elevate your city to its rightful place in the cosmos. Will you listen?" "I will." This answer, twice the length of the first, represented a remarkable step forward in her ability to think. Her eyes turned, searching for something in the mist to focus on. A pause followed. The storm spoke first. "What is your name?" The man holding the box stood in the same spot, ignored. Envying him greatly, Shada answered in what seemed like a polite tone. "Shada." She started to bow but stopped herself. What was the proper way to address the air around you? The mist before her eyes took sudden shape, forming the same face she had seen in the box. It was almost too close to focus her eyes on. She leaned back a little, but the face only moved closer. She took small breaths, not wanting to inhale the particles that formed it. The dimensions of the face twisted, forming a smile. The voice said, "Let us begin. I will need your help. Are you ready?" Shada could imagine few questions she would be less capable of answering just then. Deliberate thought was nearly impossible, deep reflection nearer still. Composing herself, she gave the only answer conceivable when one was confronted with the demands of a god. So that's chapter 1. I'm thirsty.
Oh, I was like waiting for her answer.
That's cliffhanger.
Yeah. I didn't realize it was over until you said that's the end of chapter 1. I was like, wait, but what does she say? Who is the guy? What happens?
There's a lot going on. Well, she's got to say yes, or else not much else happens.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I was hoping she'd say yes, so we'd get more information. So who is the guy?
The man who's standing there is he is a man who has assisted this being in traveling across the universe to find the city of Ronia. And the shape in the box is a being called the Lady, who claims to be a messenger from Ronia's lost goddess, and who will lead them back to their goddess so that she can rescue the city. So the guy has been traveling with her for a long, long time, and he serves her very devotedly.
Yeah. All right. So why do they have to travel across the universe to get to this city? Did they not know where it was, or were they blocked from getting to it?
Yeah.
Were they expelled and shot far off into the universe and had to come back?
That's a good. There. I should explain the society is interplanetary.
Okay.
Basically, it's a low-tech society, but it exists in the ruins of a much older one that had portals between planets.
Okay.
Which people could travel, and so they don't understand where the portals came from or why they're there. But actual human civilization is spread across many star systems.
Do they use the portals? They don't. I mean, doesn't sound like they would if they don't understand them.
Well, they do use them. They just don't kind of know where they came from. But they've figured out that they're handy for getting from world to world. And so a sort of interstellar society has formed loosely.
Okay. So that's it. All right. So some aliens or some older race left behind these portals, which may or may not be magic, maybe sufficiently advanced technology. That's kind of neat. It's given me, I'm getting flashbacks to when I read the Relevation Space series by Alastair Reynolds. But that's hard science fiction. But it was the same kind of thing. There was this advanced alien race, and they find the artifacts, and they're trying to figure stuff out. There's a whole lot more to it, but it has a similar tone too. So I think that's why it called, my brain made the connection. Yeah, but that's really cool. So who's the civilization that left behind these portals?
Well, I'm trying to figure out if it's a spoiler to say. Basically, the humanity used to be in the care of gods who have since vanished, and the gods built the portals and built humans basically whatever they wanted on each planet. Basically, they were there to provide for humans every need and want, essentially. And so when they vanished, humanity was left behind in a helpless state, and it was a chaotic time, and a lot of people died, and things were terrible. And the time in which the story takes place is when civilization has rebuilt itself somewhat. So it's about at a technology level of like maybe 18th century in our world, something like that. So
that's cool. So you went with the advanced civilization, whatever they are. scattered humanity around for their own reasons.
Mm-hmm.
Very cool.
Yeah, it's there's a long history that precedes the story, I guess, is epic fantasy.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's interesting because it's epic fantasy, but it's interplanetary epic fantasy, which is really interesting. So are we going to see these? I guess, are we going to be traveling to other realms, or does this book take place mostly in Ronia?
No, they leave Ronia pretty quickly, and the series is essentially the various worlds that they travel to in their quest.
I see.
So we see a lot of wild realms and worlds and life forms.
I see. So they hop into the portal. And so I guess someone has mapped out where all these different portals go to, or there's some portals that they don't know where it goes, that nobody's gone through.
Yeah, different groups of people, different civilizations know different portions of the network. And then there are some that are completely beyond anyone's knowledge. So some are known and mapped, and some aren't, which becomes a problem for the company that goes on this quest, because they reach a point where they don't know where they're going next. And each place they get to is kind of a surprise.
Yeah, and like with this, the god's gone, and who's maintaining the portals? Or
well, the portals are stable enough to stick around on their own, but the ecosystems of a lot of planets aren't actually. They sort of went haywire after the gods disappeared, and so on a number of places there were ecological disasters, and climates changed, and things were born and died, and it got real crazy.
That's interesting. So, all right. So the portals, how long are the portals going to stick around without some sort of maintenance, or is that why the gods are coming back?
Presumably,
are they coming back because the planets are failing?
Presumably they'll be around indefinitely.
Okay.
I not really considered them breaking down, really. So I figured they're it's advanced enough technology that they just hang around long enough to be effectively forever.
What powers them?
Magic.
Where do they get the magic from?
Technology, basically. Yeah, I think they're permanent fixtures in the fabric of space and time.
Okay, so so that's interesting. So they're sort of fuel themselves then.
Yeah. They hang out.
That's wild. Could like one of the human characters like gain the power to create their own portal, or that's something that's like beyond their ability, they would never be able to do?
That's beyond their reach. They wouldn't be able to do that. I think that the knowledge of how to do that has been lost, along with a lot of other knowledge when the gods disappeared.
Gotcha. So why did the gods disappear? They just decided on a vacation, or?
Well, that's something that they find out over the course of the stories. So
gotcha.
That's in spoiler territory.
That's okay. That's the name of the game. You don't have to answer any question that gives away too much. Oh, that's wild. All right, so we've talked about the portals in the world, so that's good. Dig into the character. So we've got Shada. So so she seems, we had a very interesting introduction to her. So she seems like a strong woman. And who else is? So you said that it's not just her, that she's got sort of a crew. So who does she recruit? And how do you put together a company for a mission like that?
Basically, the task of putting together this company falls under this the bishop of what I call the temple, which is the main religion of Ronia. And
got it.
So the temple offers forgiveness of sins in exchange for whoever volunteers for this mission, with the understanding that whoever goes may well not come back, because they're kind of going into the wild. And so so the people who sign up are people who are desperate enough to risk death, basically, for forgiveness for whatever it is they've done. So a lot of them are soldiers. One of the main characters is Emberly. He's a captain of Ronia's army, and he has his own dark secrets. And he and his soldiers make up a large part of the company. And the soldiers who volunteer are generally troubled guys who don't have a lot of. They have reason to be desperate enough to go on this journey, basically.
Do we find out what in the course of the story why they decided to go, like what motivated them, what dark secrets? That's cool.
Yeah, that becomes a lot of big plot points revolve around the characters' pasts and what got them into going on this in the first place, and the lies that they've told and how those things catch up with them, and how they have to reckon with the things that they've done.
Oh wow, that's pretty cool. So and why does Shada go? I guess she goes because she met the guy, and or does she have something in her past that she's trying to get resolved?
She's kind of an exception, because she actually goes because the lady specifically chooses her to be the new caretaker, basically to replace the big beast man who we met in that chapter. And so Shada is essentially does not really have a choice about going. But the temple also offers to care for her father, who is sick and is addicted to substances and is more than she can really take care of on her own. And so the chance to have him basically set up for life helps motivate her to take on the quest.
My own dad is in the hospital, not for that. So I feel I feel that strongly.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, he's in his 70s. There were things that he could have done earlier in life that to not be where he is and not do those things. So if your doctor tells you make a couple of life changes to avoid kidney failure later, do them.
Yeah.
So, that's a lot of his issues right now is stemming from that kidney failure and from the dialysis. And yeah.
Well, okay.
He's got like 9 lives. He's the human version of a cat, man. So he'll be okay. But being in and out of hospitals is no fun.
Oh, it's stressful.
And that's kind of the reality when your kidneys don't work anymore and you're depending on machines and and they're putting ports in your body to hook those machines up to. Like, a lot can go wrong.
Yeah, I've had family members in that situation. It's very demanding, all the care that they do.
It is challenging. My mother's a saint for getting involved. He wouldn't be able to do the home dialysis if she wasn't there. I haven't seen the machine yet. I haven't been able to get. He only just got it. They only had it. They were only done a couple of sessions before they ran into some serious problems and they were told to just go to the medical center and let them evaluate and see what you need and figure things out. So so it's let that take care of your health.
Yeah.
If your doctor says take blood pressure pills to keep your blood pressure low so you don't destroy your kidneys, please do it. They're not kidding. This is not a joke.
Yeah, definitely not.
Yeah, it's not a. Yeah, and it's like looking back, you can see that like it's just a couple of minor course corrections, just upping the blood pressure medication. You wouldn't have had the hemorrhagic stroke, which is a stroke from high blood pressure, which wouldn't have almost taken out his kidneys. And it's just dominoes from there. So if anyone out there is been diagnosed with high blood pressure, please take care of it. It's not a joke. It can do high blood pressure can do serious harm to your body. So be very careful. Okay, enough on the medical. Let's get back into the fantasy, which is why we're here. We're here to talk about summoning and sacrifice. So why did you title it Summoning and Sacrifice? Because is there a summoning and is there a sacrifice in the book?
Yeah, basically the whole it's kind of a literal title. The whole the characters are summoned together and then they're sent on this journey to save their city, and essentially are being sacrificed because there's a very high risk of not returning. And so summoning and sacrifice, I just like the sound of it. Has got a nice alliteration. Nice. And thank you. And then it also just has that literal significance of those things. And it also has those two words also kind of have the connotation of like a ritual, like, you know, a religious sort of vibe. And that's a vibe and a theme that hangs around the story. And so it felt appropriate to include them.
Yeah, I saw that the series title is The Liturgy of the Worlds, which I like that play on, instead of the Liturgy of the Word, which is part of the I don't know if it's part of other masses, but it's definitely part of the Roman Catholic Mass, which is what I grew up with. My mom was Italian. That was where we went. So I like that as Liturgy of the Worlds. That's pretty cool. All right. So you in your, I think it was in your blurb, you said that there's darkness looming. Like, so what is that darkness looming? Is that figurative? Is there like is there like a literal like like I'm picturing like, you know, like the Lord of the Rings with like the actual darkness, you know, moving over with Sauron to you know, to shield the Uruk-hai. I'm pretty sure that's not how you mean it, but like when I hear darkness looms, that's the immediate picture my brain gets.
Yeah.
I blame Peter Jackson for that.
The darkness in this case is essentially just the crumbling of the society of Ronia. And it's not entirely a bad thing. It's an empire that rules a lot of worlds. And so it's has not always treated its subject peoples very well. And so the falling apart of that empire through kind of accumulating wars and rebellions, they're all kind of portents of the decline of that society. And I guess the darkness would just be the kind of chaos and ruin that is left whenever things fall apart. Even if the society that did exist was not a great one or not the most moral one, still the falling apart is ugly. And so I think the darkness is that, and the hope is that if the goddess returns, that she'll be able to restore Ronia to what it was in its glory days.
So are these gods and goddesses in your story sort of like the Greek and Roman ones, or like the ones we have that in our world where like specific each deity has a very specific set of like attributes and abilities?
They all each one rule over a separate planet, and so they all kind of develop their own qualities and characteristics. So some, when they appear physically, some prefer to appear as humans, you know, like sort of like the Greek or Roman gods. There's some that are, you know, clouds of dust. There's some that are like geometric shapes. You know, it's just all kinds of different things that they like to do for their own reasons. And so but the concept of gods, it's like a lot of gods existing side by side. So sort of a pantheon situation. There's not like one almighty God, you know?
Yeah. Did they all work together, or were there like wars between them?
Well, back in the day, they all more or less worked together because they had the same goal, which was to make people happy and to care for them. And so they had the whole cosmos to work with to make worlds that people wanted to live in. And so essentially there was really no way for them to end up at cross purposes. They just all had their own space and their own room to work. So they more or less cooperated.
where did they come from? So they created the humans and the worlds, but where did they come from, the gods?
Ronians believe that they created the gods out of their own love and out of their own will. Basically, Ronians needed a god, and so the goddess appeared. Basically, they willed her into being with love. And the actual truth of the matter is something that you find out on the way.
Okay. Yeah, because if they willed her into being out of love, then I don't see a reason why she would have left. So there has to be more to it than that.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. There's more that gets kind of complex.
Does she have a name, the goddess, or any special abilities or anything?
Her name is Huira, which is Huire. And the Ronians believe her to be the mightiest of the gods. So they have a vision of her that's sort of similar to maybe the Christian version of an almighty God who's above all the others. So she doesn't have any particular powers per se, but is all gods have the ability to essentially transform worlds over time to make them what people want them to be. And they can assume physical form and do whatever their physical form allows them to do. So if they take the shape of a person, they can do people stuff, Mm-hmm. So, and one thing they can't do is they can't disappear and reappear in a different place. They have to actually physically travel from place to place, which there's reasons for that become apparent. But that's one limitation.
No, that's very cool. That's very cool. So who founded the city of Ronia? Were they, because it sounds like the people existed before the goddess. So where did the people come from?
The people, I imagine, I don't think I get into this specifically in the book, but I think the people, as the gods formed worlds for people to live in, I think this was a place where a lot of gateways happened to converge on this one planet. And so a lot of people congregated here and they formed a society.
I see.
And so that is where eventually what became Ronia formed before the gods disappeared, obviously, and then became probably took on the name of Ronia afterwards in the centuries of history that followed.
Interesting. So did the gateways, the portals exist, the portal network exists before the planets, or the planets were there and then they built the gateways between them afterwards? Because what you just said, it sounded like the portals existed first.
Yeah, no, sorry, they didn't exist first. The planets existed first, and then the gods traveled from planet to planet and built the portals as they went to allow people to follow them easily.
That's interesting. So it sounds like the gods and goddesses didn't rule over just one world. As if they're wandering around making portals to other ones, then they may have had more than one world that they were watching over.
Yeah, I think they got it in their heads that it was an act of service to humanity to create and alter a lot of different planets for people to live in. And so they went from world to world doing that, and people were happy to oblige and follow and, live in whatever conditions they saw fit to live in based on the planet that they decided to settle in.
No, that's interesting. It's interesting because it if you wanted to protect humanity and ensure that it survives, spreading them out across many worlds is how you would do it. Yeah, not collect everyone all in one place like we currently have.
Right. Don't put all your eggs in one basket.
So that leads, why do they want to protect humanity like that? Is there something special or specific to humanity that it needs to survive? I guess if they willed a god into existence, they need people to believe in them.
Yeah, I think the gods, basically the gods, they came into existence. Part of the conditions of their existence was they are things that serve people. So it just was one of the starting kind of principles by which they operate. So it's not, they don't really have a particular reason for wanting it, except that wanting that is part of what they are. So that's just what they do.
No, that's really interesting.
Thank you.
Is there any, you want to talk about any of the other worlds? We've talked about Ronia. Is there any other interesting world or interesting features that you want to talk about? Or are they all spoilers until we get there in the series?
Yeah, they're kind of all spoilers. Captain Emberly and his soldiers, before leaving on this expedition, they served on a world called Galbraith, and it's a heavily forested place where the local people are in a state of rebellion and are essentially fighting a guerrilla war against Ronian occupation. And so the captain and his soldiers have just been through this very traumatic, almost like Vietnam-like experience. Mm-hmm. And it's really shaken them up and hurt a lot of them, mentally and physically. And so they're in a position both not want to put themselves in more jeopardy, but also in a position of feeling desperate, many of them, because they have done things that they really want forgiveness for, or are feeling the need to perform some great act to redeem themselves or to make their lives have meaning.
Oh wow, that's wild. That would be a difficult situation, fighting a war like that, a guerrilla war like that. Yeah. Especially if you're not sure if you're on the right side because of some of the things that your side is doing. That can really, I could see why someone would volunteer for a mission they may not come back from. You might be in a situation where you're not sure you want to be continuing to live. So leaving it up to fate, whether you survive this or not, that's wow. That's deep.
Yeah, totally. I think that, trauma can push people, and, guilt can push people to do all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
So I think, a certain number of the people in Emberly's company saw this as a way to find some kind of satisfaction or meaning.
Yeah. And that was put Shada in an interesting position because she's dealing with a lot of emotionally and fragile people that are on this like quest, and they're carrying around a lot of emotional baggage and probably a lot of PTSD in this search. And going from like sort of a military situation to, okay, we are searching for something and we are not in a military situation. We're not fighting people. We are looking for clues. We're piecing together a mystery. That's a lot of mental gymnastics.
Yeah. And she, and what complicates it is that Shada is also, she's not technically an off-worlder, but her mother was from a different planet. And her mother was from another planet on which the people there have decorative markings on their faces. And so Shada inherited her mother's decorative markings, but kind of in a faded, smeared version. So they don't look quite as perfect as her mother's did. They look kind of like a bit like a smudged painting kind of. And so she walks around with this reminder to everyone that she's not from, she has ancestry not of Ronia, and that that is something that affects her life, daily, and that everyone around her, including the people on this journey, are also reminded of all the time.
Oh, wow. That's got to be interesting if they go to that world where her mother is from and she has the smudge marks and they don't, having that perfection in your face all the time could be very difficult to handle.
That would be. Yeah, they don't go there, but that would be.
Oh, they should. Missed opportunity. Well, it's how many books are going to be in the series? Maybe you've still got time.
There's 4 total, so I think I'm out of time. Maybe if I don't know, maybe a prequel.
Hey, go for it.
Yeah, I know.
It sounds like you have a lot of, you've got this huge, you've got universes, and you've got a whole universe full of planets and gateways and things. Is this the only series that you're going to be writing in this world?
For now, yeah. We'll see how the series goes and how it's received. But I think I've been working on these stories since like 2011. Mm-hmm. So I'm feeling the urge to do other stuff. Mm-hmm. But if it goes really well, and if I'm feeling like I have enough material in terms of creativity wise to work with, then that would be something I'd consider. Yeah.
No, that's very cool. So, all right. So there's going to be 4 books in this series, and it sounds like you're finishing up the 4th book.
Yeah, I have them all done in draft form. But I'm currently kind of deep in revisions of book 3. And so that's like what's like my whole, I actually had to go back and skim this book before this conversation because my head is just so in book 3.
Oh man, we could have got some spoilers out of you.
Yeah, I was thinking about it as I was talking. I was like, is this, when did we find this out? But yeah, so after book 3, then I'll revise book 4 and then publish them.
Yeah, I think I saw that book 3 is coming out July 31st. Is that this year or next year?
Book 3 should be book 2, I'm sorry, came out July 31st.
Oh, book 2 came. Okay, so Hymns of the Wild is book 2. Gotcha. Mm-hmm. So book 3 we're looking at for next year, and book 4?
Book 3 is gonna come out at the end of November.
Okay.
In 4 months, and then book 4 months after that.
Okay.
I've kind of set myself to that schedule to commit myself to the keeping things moving here. And hoping to I'll definitely keep that pace up, but then, we'll see after that.
No, it's a sustainable pace. I do 3, 4 books per year. Although 2020 during the pandemic, because I was working from home, for my day job, there was no commuting. It was fabulous. It was wonderful. Oh, right. I wrote 6 books in a year because I wasn't spending, over 2 to 3 hours a day commuting. So I wrote. But 3 to 4 is about the speed, closer to 3 than 4 with us going back to the office more days. But it seems to be a cadence that it's, it's a cadence that, like, if you have to miss it, if you can't write one day because you're working late or something, then it doesn't throw things off. Like it does if you're trying to finish a book every 2 months, then you can't take time.
That's a terrifying.
Yeah. So that's just not a reality at the moment. I would love to, but that's not a reality at the moment. So I'm with you on the 4 months in between books. It's much more doable if you're not doing this full time.
Mm-hmm. It feels like a sustainable pace. I'm still studying with this, that I'm kind of learning what is sustainable, but I'm guessing that that's sustainable.
I mean, I've been doing that for years, and for me, it is definitely sustainable. Like I said, like I have a full-time job and with the commute, and sometimes, especially like in the wintertime when I live in the Northeast. So there's, if there's a snowstorm, it can take me over 4 hours to get home. And by the time I get home, I need to go to sleep because I have to get up at 6 to go back and do this all over again. Yeah. So, it's on a night like that, I wouldn't be able to write. Or like the time that I got into a car accident trying to get out of the city where I work and ended up like my car was just stuck and I just had to stay with a coworker, and I wasn't able to do I did a little bit of writing on my phone, but it was just not like trying to get the repairs, trying to figure out how I'm gonna get to work, how am I gonna get home from work, because how am I gonna get the car to a garage, like trying to like just all the logistics, and and checking up on family because it was a blizzard, of course, that hit at 4:00 in the afternoon when I'm in a meeting. So so like it's so like at least like when you're with 4 months in between books, it like gives you, if there's like oh my god, I just can't, you can take you can have those days where you're just like, I just can't. There's just something is going on, and I want to write, but there are not enough hours in the day, and I have other things,
Yeah.
I have to sit in traffic for 4 hours, trying to get home or something. I hope never to do that again.
I imagine that's not very conducive to creativity if you're worried about getting your car fixed and sleeping over at someplace.
But yeah, it's awkward. Like, and yeah, and so for me, like I want to be more 3 months, every 3 months a book, but reality is like, my father was rushed to the hospital a couple of days ago, and I spent almost 2 hours trying to see him yesterday, only the road was all blocked off because they're doing construction, and I was finally forced to just give up and call and be like, look, I love you, Dad, I'm sorry. I can see the hospital, but I just cannot drive to it.
Yeah. Oh, that's frustrating.
Yeah, I didn't really get any writing done last night because of that. I was like, but that kind of cadence, if you have something like that, and if writing is not a full-time gig, that can happen at least like once a week. Something could pull you away or leave you with not enough time to get much done because you're juggling other things. So yeah, I mean, depending on your process, like I think 4 months is sustainable.
Yeah, that's good. I feel like it's good to have some, as you were saying, some room in there for things to go wrong and for life to happen and throw wrenches into the process. And I'm still sort of figuring out what my process is and how to do stuff like make print books, stuff like that, like things that I just don't know and I have to research as I go. So it's really helpful to have that extra padding of time.
Yes. And I recommend not putting it on pre-order until you're until you're like close to done, and that even if like everything goes wrong, life throws 5 wrenches at you, that you can still make it, because that the kind of stress that comes with that like can be unreal. So be kind to yourself.
Yeah. It's kind of it's just starting out. You don't really have readers waiting, so it's a little less pressure because there's not an audience expecting it. But I imagine particularly once you really get a readership, it's like, man, the pressure.
Yeah, and I'm that type A personality that if I commit to something, like I will kill myself to make it. So. Now I don't do that anymore until I'm like absolutely certain that it'll be done a few days before this date. Then I'll put it up for pre-order. So that way, like if life goes wrong, I've got like a couple of days, maybe a week of grace.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. So all right, so book 1 is out, book 2 is out, book 3 is on the way, and book 4 is on the way, and maybe there'll be a prequel.
Yeah, a possible prequel. We'll see if I can muster the inspiration.
That would be cool. If not, you've got other. It sounds like you've got other worlds in your mind to play with.
Yeah, I've kind of, as I'm going through this, I'm sort of developing what the next thing's going to be, and trying to get that in reasonable shape so I can sort of hit the ground running when I'm done with these books. And so it's going to be good. I think it'll be a lot smoother of a process because I won't take like 10 years to write it this time. I think Liturgy of Worlds was something that I really began with no particular desire to market to any particular audience or to know what the tropes that readers they're in demand are or things like that. And so you
use a lot of sci-fi tropes.
I do. Yeah.
I mean, you're using a lot of like sci-fi tropes. The whole like benevolent elder race, the whole spreading humanity, and lots of relics from left behind by ancient civilization that no one knows quite what they are or what they do. I mean, these are some Yeah, there's a lot of sci-fi. I didn't hear too many of the fantasy tropes. I heard a lot of the sci-fi ones. You're pretty. I was literally just mentally going down the list and just checking them off. So
it's kind of a borderline case, really. It's a little difficult. Like I definitely knew there were a lot of sci-fi elements, and so I was like, what do I call this? And ultimately, I decided that the structure of the story, the quest, the gods, and this journey through realms, and the low tech, swords and flintlock weaponry and technology level all said fantasy to me. So that's why I went with that.
Have you? You should look into. I think what's his? I think Peter. No, what's his name? He did the. God, I can't think of the name of it. But he does like science fiction, like fantasy, like low tech, but like fantasy elements. I'm gonna have to look him up after the podcast because like I read a whole bunch of his books, and this was like, this was definitely pinging it. And what is it?
Peter something?
It's I can't think of the name of the. Dan Simmons is one of them. He was the other one I was thinking of because he has the my favorite duology, Ilium and Olympos, which is like this postmodern society. They decide that they are gods, and they recreate the Trojan War on Mars, and then just it's wild. Wow. And some of the people they bring back like realize that something is going on here. This is not the real Trojan War. Like. It gets pretty wild, but he does actually have science fiction elements in there. There are these like my favorite like robots in all of sci-fi are in there who they're like argue about Shakespeare and Proust. I adore them. And they're out like by Saturn or something, and they've lost touch with humanity, and they decide after they argue about literary stuff that maybe they should go check it out. Maybe they should build a solar sail, and they have to figure out how to do this. They decide on a solar sail, and that they should go back to Earth and figure out like, well, why haven't they heard from their masters in a while? They're like, this is not, they're pretty self-sufficient, but they love human culture, and they need humans to keep producing it so they can argue about it, because they'll have their particular thing that they're like into and they're like hyper fixated on. And so yeah, it's wild. But he also has the which I also love was the it's 4 books. Hyperion, The Fall of Hyperion, Endymion. I forgot what the 4th one is called. And those have there's sci-fi. There's a lot of fantasy elements. But I think it's Peter Hamilton. I'm gonna like Google him right now.
Like Hyperion's one of my favorite books, and like that duology I really love.
I think it's yes. Okay, it's Peter F. Hamilton. He writes. He has. It's Judas Unchained is the second one. I can't think of the first one. He's done a whole lot of like science fiction, fantasy, sort of mashed together. Yeah. Like he has the Void trilogy. Judas Unchained is not the first book in the series. Come on. Because it's the Commonwealth saga. And yeah, he's got a whole bunch of stuff. So he might be something to check out, especially like he always has like a epic fantasy like subplot. He'll have some other stuff that is recognizably like science fiction, but like not like there might be living in the far future, but it seems more like fantasy than science fiction. And there'll be like cyberpunk elements on one thread. And then there's this whole giant thing that's literally epic fantasy, like straight out of the thing, epic fantasy. Searching for gods, that's a big thing in there. Especially like, was it Dreaming Void? I think, I don't remember the first book, but and he has, I believe he also has the alien civilization leaving stuff around, but something to look into, because those could be like potential like comp authors or something that fans of those might be. From what I'm hearing, they would be interested.
Thank you. That's cool. Yeah, I think I almost read one of those books this summer. I think that was almost my beach read, and I think I went with something else, but that sounds like something I really like, because the idea of an ancient alien civilization that left a lot of artifacts lying around and people are investigating them sounds really familiar to me.
I don't remember. I don't think that was the Commonwealth. I don't think that was the Commonwealth saga. I think it's the Void trilogy. That was the alien artifacts, with Araminta, and I love that name. I know. I'm pretty sure she was in there. Yeah. So just some, and it's a really cool premise.
Yeah. Totally.
And it hits a lot of like the sci-fi tropes that people that are, I think are, that I like. It also kind of has the Dune feel, because Dune is more fantasy than science fiction. I don't know who needs to hear that, but I've read the original 6 Dune books. They're fantasy. There's very little science in there, and you really have to like pull out the magnifying glass to look for it. It is very fantasy, dude.
Seeing the future and the spice and folding space is all very.
Oh, did you read God Emperor of Dune when like he becomes the sandworm?
I haven't. Alert. Well, I knew that happened. I haven't gotten to God Emperor yet. I've read the first 3. I'm working my way there over a period of many years.
Oh yeah. That's the 4th one. It happens. Yeah, it's pretty. I didn't like that one. That part is kind of neat, but getting to it was not one of my favorite books.
I hear it's a lot of philosophical discussions and things like that in God Emperor.
Yes. Yeah. I liked like Chapter House Dune, and I liked Chapter House Dune more. That was with more about the Bene Gesserit, and it's the whole thing comes full circle. So Dune gets destroyed, they create a new Dune. Like it's kind of cool. I know people don't like the 5th and the 6th books, but I liked them because you see Dune as a character. It was a character all the way through, but in the last 2, it's more evident because of the politics and everything going on. Because and the spice also, because they need the spice, need the sandworms, and it's just it's very neat how the whole thing becomes a cycle. I don't want to give away too many spoilers because it's very cool, but it's not the easiest read.
Yeah, it's a challenge. I'll get to the last 3 in the series one of these days. I've got them, most of them, on my shelf, so I've got to read them. But I reread Dune and Dune Messiah this year in hopeful preparation to get all the way through the series, because I read them so long ago that I just would be starting from scratch, basically. I remembered so little. And then I guess also maybe they're making more Dune movies after this new one that's coming out. So
probably. I mean, this one did very well, even though they did it in 2 parts. I would hope that the next one they don't do in 2 parts, or if get the 2 parts closer together. Because like, wasn't there like 2 years in between?
Feels like it.
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't see the first Dune because it was like, it's only half, and I was like, I'm gonna wait until the whole thing, and then I'll just watch the whole thing.
I found out it was the first half in the theater. I was like, man, they're really gonna put a lot of stuff into 2 hours, and then it was like Dune Part 1. I was like, that explains stuff.
I saw some of the trailer. I was like, there's no way this is the whole thing. Yeah. And then I heard it was only for some. I was like, yep. Yeah, I figured that.
I was like, wait, where's Fade Routha? Is he showing up at some point?
Yeah, it just the trailer, like, because I noticed, because in the trailers lately, like over the course of the time that I have been alive, trailers went from like showing you like cool stuff but leaving some things to the imagination to let's show you all the things in 2 minutes that are in the entire movie, so that when you get there, you've seen all the coolest parts already in the trailer, and all the everything in there was like only from the first half of the book, and I was like, there's no way.
Yeah.
Unless I'm really misremembering the book, there is no way this is the entire Dune story.
Yeah,
So.
like if nobody rides a sandworm in the trailer,
That's what gave it away. That was the thing. When I didn't see anybody riding a sandworm, I was like, this is not the whole movie, because if it was, that's what the trailer would have been, all about the sandworms, like them riding it, the dramatic, like coming to the city, when he's coming to overthrow the emperor, like there would have been stuff from the other second half of the book. If they did the whole movie, there would not have been as much at the beginning. Like you know what I mean? Like there would have been scenes from the second half, and there wasn't. So I was like, something's not adding up.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that. That's funny. But,
yeah, I studied that trailer, man. I was like, so I was like,
so you still haven't seen the first Dune movie?
No, but I've read the book, so I know what happens. Right. And I saw the Dune, the Sci-Fi Channel at one point did like the Children of Dune. I don't remember. Yeah. I think they also did Dune. I don't remember. But and I saw the 1980 version of Dune like years later. I didn't see it in the 80s. I was too young. But yeah, and I've read the book, so I know what happens. And yeah, so I will see both parts when the second one is out.
That'd be fun.
Yeah.
That'd be like a double feature.
Yeah, I haven't decided exactly how I'm going to do that, but the second one's not out yet, so I don't have to worry. So that's a to be continued, because I think it comes out next year. It's like 2024.
That sounds right. Yeah.
I don't think it's coming out this year. A lot of stuff is 2024. Rings of Power is 2024.
Oh. I haven't seen Rings of Power. So.
I like things about it. I like I like the Amazon original characters a lot. Some of the characters some of Tolkien's characters, I don't particularly like what they did with. I don't like what they did with Mithril. There's a lot of things that are lore breaking, but they're not lore breaking for like good, entertaining reasons. They're kind of, you see it and you're like, this totally breaks the lore for no apparent reason. There's no gain. Like they just decided, you know what? We're going to break the lore for nothing. And that was kind of annoying, because I was like, if you're going to break the lore and they don't follow through on it, so they break the lore on a couple of things, but then that would have implications and they don't deal with it.
Oh, that's not good.
Yeah. Like they changed Mithril is just a pretty rock. It doesn't do it doesn't have magical powers. It's a pretty rock. It's strong if you make something out of it. That's literally it. And they add all this mystical nonsense on top of it and then don't follow through on it. And I was like, Frodo had a Mithril shirt. If you're going to continue with all this mystical nonsense, there was a lot of callbacks to the movies. Like too much. Okay. Like things that just didn't like, they just kept like, it was weird. It was like the movies happened 3,000 years later. How can you call back to something that didn't happen yet? Like that was the whole, like, it was twisting my brain up. I was like, they're repeating lines, and it was a mystery box format. Like who is this, who is the man who fell from the sky? There's a lot of like, who is, and you're supposed to be wondering who is Sauron, and it's like, I don't know. But I liked, there were things that I really liked. I really liked the I can't think of his name, the Black Elf. He was very cool, and I liked Durin and Disa, the dwarf couple. They were very cool, and Nazarene Bonani. I can't think of her. I can't get her name right, but she was one of the Southland villagers. She was very good. Just a lot of really, these are all like the characters Amazon made up. They were very good, very true to like the world. Very good. For some reason, Tolkien's characters, they like did weird things with. I don't get it.
Yeah, that's interesting. You think it would be the opposite?
Like, that was the whole thing that left me confused. So like, I'm not like, I don't know. I'm not sure about like season 2. Like there was just, I don't know. It was very weird. I'm not sure what they're gonna follow it up with in season 2. Like they did so many weird things.
Is it the Silmarillion, basically?
No. So at the end, all they have the rights to is the Lord of the Rings trilogy and the appendices in the Lord of the Rings. So if you look at the appendices, there's a Tolkien included a summary of what happened before the Lord of the Rings, Sauron came to the elves in the form of this beautiful stranger. His name was Anatar. So the people who made the Rings of Power, which is supposed to be about the making of the Rings of Power, just kind of ignored this and did their own thing. And it was like what Tolkien had was pretty darn cool. Like this guy deceives the elves, and and there's the whole thing about the ring making. The ring making was literally like 15 minutes in the last episode, and I was like, the title of the show is The Rings of Power.
Yeah.
Why did we spend all these episodes of no rings? Yeah, it was just very weird.
When the makers feel the need to, I'm not sure, to like make their own mark or to adapt for like make changes for the sake of it. I'm not sure, but
I don't know. That's the part that I could not figure out is like if they were trying to put their own stamp on it, they didn't do that because there was so much callbacks to Lord of the Rings, which will happen in 3,000 years from this point. Most of those characters in the Lord of the Rings do not exist yet.
Yeah.
Their ancestors don't really exist yet. Like
it's like a flash forward, I guess.
It's weird. It's like repeating verbatim lines from the Peter Jackson movies. Like that kind of, it was just very strange. And I'm of two minds about season 2. I am curious what they're going to do with it, but at the same time, like, if I never watched another episode, I don't think I'd be missing anything because it doesn't really follow the lore, and the lore is better. There's some good stuff in the Rings of Power show, but it's the new original characters. They could have done like their own epic fantasy show with their own original characters and story, and I think that would have been better. I don't know, but like it's something you'd have to watch yourself and see what you think. It's also very slow, and they throw a lot of stuff at you in the first couple of episodes, and some of it is not lore accurate.
Okay.
And some of it you're like, why are you throwing all this at us? Like it's about the Rings of Power. Let's just concentrate on the elves and have Sauron come to them as a mysterious stranger and get them to make the Rings of Power. Like that's what I expected it to be about, and that was not at all what it was about. Yeah, I think the show just couldn't figure out what it wanted to be. I think that's the problem. Season 1 just didn't know what it wanted to be, where it wanted to go. Even though that the title is The Rings of Power, like that should have been a really big clue, like what we need to be doing here. But I don't know. I don't know. We'll see. Well, it's not coming back till 2024. They're shooting it now or something. So I have lots of time to decide. And if I do watch it, I think I'm going to wait till all the episodes are out for it. I'm not going to, it strung me along and played with my mind last time around. I'm not giving it that power.
Yeah. I might wait until I see some reviews or hear about it. And if it sounds
it's very mixed.
I'll get around to it.
The reviews are very mixed. And I know a lot of people who that this was their first introduction to Tolkien's works. Some of them really like it. Some of them of people that I personally know are just very confused and very turned off by the first episode because there's a way that you bring in new fans and there's a way that you don't, and they did it in the way that you don't. It was info dump. It was a giant info dump with pretty pictures. And that for someone who has nothing to do with Tolkien and an angry, character, and that it was a very abrasive way of bringing someone in to the show, to the series. So, and it hurts me to say that because Galadriel is like one of my favorite characters. But not the version of her in the show.
Yeah. It's something that's pretty tricky to do, because I know the Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings start with a prologue that I really felt fine with, even though
I loved it.
Yeah, that was like cool. And I guess they included some cinematic bits of, Sauron throwing people around, and they made it really entertaining.
It was easy. Yes, it was easy to follow. It was good versus evil. And it was it's not really that long. It's only a couple of minutes. But the beginning of the Rings of Power, they're talking about like they start out in whatchamacallit, not Valeria, the
Undying Lands.
They start out with where the I can't think of the name of it, where the elves started before they came to Middle Earth. I can't think of the name of it right now. And then we go into this montage of like everything in the Silmarillion that they can't really like, because they don't have the rights to Silmarillion. So
right.
like pictures that represent, and they don't have the rights to Silmarillion, so they come up with their own thing. And I'm like, this is not necessary. Like nobody, it's not something that you need. The Rings of Power is supposed to be about the making of the Rings of Power. You could have just started with them in Eregion, the elves living their best life, and this beautiful stranger comes and convinces them to make some Rings of Power, and we go from, like we could have just gone from there. And that would have been really interesting. Like, how do you fool the elves? Like, who, if people have read it, they'd know that he's Sauron. People who didn't would be like, who is this guy? And what's his angle?
Yeah.
And Galadriel suspected him from the beginning, but people didn't really have any concrete proof, and people weren't going to listen to her. So like there was, you could have had this interesting thing showing that the elves are fallible, which is the whole point of the Rings of Power, like that Tolkien had written, to show that the elves are not perfect. They're fallible. They totally missed that. And they went in a whole other direction. And like, from the people that I know who'd never had anything to do with anything of Tolkien, like they found that very off-putting the first couple episodes, very hard to follow. And I've read the Silmarillion, and I found it hard to follow. And I've actually read it. Like I read it before the show came on, and like I still was not sure about some things. So it was just weird.
That's a really common issue that people have. People who don't like epic fantasy, a common issue is it's just too many names getting thrown at them, and there's just too much to absorb. And like, I guess a certain amount of that is just kind of part of doing business. It's just the genre, but it's better to make it accessible to people if you want a lot of people to like it.
Well, there's a way to do that so that it doesn't hit people. And they didn't really like with the prologue for the Lord of the Rings, like it's very easy to follow. It's good versus evil. There were some rings. This guy made a master ring to control all the other people using the rings. Okay, now we've got a problem. We need to get this master ring away from this guy. Like, it was super easy, like, to follow. But the way the Rings of Power went was it's because the Silmarillion, the wars and everything against Melkor, like, some of that just it's very disjointed and on its own, the Silmarillion, and some of it, like, there's hundreds of years in between, and some of it doesn't. It's not always clear, like, why they were going to war. Like, Melkor just decided, hey, I'm just going to attack you. I'm going to sack your city for reasons. So trying to compress all that into a couple of minutes when someone reading it, and like, no shade on Toki's son, like he did an amazing job turning his father's notes, because his father never completed the Silmarillion, and trying to make this into some kind of a narrative. It's not a cohesive narrative, the Silmarillion. There's parts and things, but it's not one giant cohesive narrative. And they didn't have the rights to it, and they tried to make some kind of cohesive thing out of it, but it's like, it was very pretty, but it wasn't like, hey, we have some rings, there's a master ring, this really evil dude has the master ring and he can control us, and he's trying to take over the world. Like, that was a very easy thing to follow. And they didn't do something, they didn't make it as clear cut in there, and instead I'm not sure what they were trying to do, and I don't think it was necessary. I think you could cut all of that. You could cut most of the first episode, and it would not have affected anything. You don't need any of that information.
Doesn't sound like it.
Yeah, so give it a watch. and see what you think, because like I read a lot of fantasy, and a lot of it, like, it's very accessible. You know, we don't throw too many things at people. You bring them in, and I mean, and the first scene you see the elves, and they're real brats. Like, you don't have any empathy for them. and then to see this summarization of them at war and losing people, and you're like, I didn't like them in scene 1. Like, like,
why do I care now?
Yeah, that's it. Like, and I think that's the reason that people had problems with that first episode, is because of your entry point did not get you any empathy. It made you not like the characters. And then to hear all about their struggles and them moving, people are like, well, I didn't like them, so I don't care. So you have no emotional investment.
It's not, that's not how stories are supposed to work.
Well, that's it. I think they just wanted a montage of pretty images. And that's what it feels like. And they're like, okay, we need to put some kind of voiceover on here so it makes some kind of sense. That's kind of how it felt. It is very beautiful. It's visually stunning, but it's not really any like depth to it beyond that. It's just very pretty. And that's a lot of the Rings of Power was that. It was very pretty, but there just wasn't, there wasn't always reasons for some of it. And some of it just like you look at it and you're like, why are they doing that? Or like the Numenorians, like, I think elves are taking their jobs. Like, they're literally chanting that. Like, I was like, no, this is the Numenorians want long life. They're jealous of the elves because they live almost forever. That's what they want. They don't think elves are coming for their jobs. Like decisions like that. Like, it's like, did you even read the source material?
Oh man. Yeah. I'll check it out at some point, even if only for the visuals, because I think that this, like, the only thing that Tolkien has really been, movies and TV have really done well by Tolkien in terms of the visuals and like the way stuff looks, because it's always beautiful, even if it's a bad movie or TV show. It's always like something I could just watch just to see it, you know.
No, it is visually stunning. I do have to give it that. And the Amazon original characters are really good, but they're not tied to whatever the writers were trying to do with the actual Tolkien characters. I'm not really so like, and I feel bad because the actors who were playing like Elrond and Galadriel, and they were hampered by some very strange writing. And they're really good actors, but they were just, I feel, and I'm going to get off my soapbox because I could keep talking about this forever. Like, I'm a huge Tolkien nerd. But we are not here to talk about that. So let's bring it back to the summoning and the sacrifice, or summoning and sacrifice. There's no the in the title. So you can check it out. It's widely available. It's not in Kindle Unlimited. I think I saw that it's across everywhere, and as well as the sequel. And it gets your portal hopping, low tech, magical fun on.
Science fantasy, maybe whatever you want to call it. Totally.
Save some gods.
Wide. It's on Barnes and Noble and Kobo and everywhere you'd want to get it. I don't know when this show will come out.
Tonight or tomorrow.
Oh, okay.
It all depends on how fast it uploads.
Book 1 is 99 cents until the 8th. Oh, so cool. It's a good time to jump on that, and then you can dive right into the second one.
Nice.
Yeah.
So everybody go out and do that. Well, it's been fantastic having you. Anything else you want to say about Summoning and Sacrifice, or Hymns of the Wild, or the Liturgy of the Worlds, which is the coolest series title?
Thank you so much. Well, if you don't want to commit to a whole book, I have a free short story called A Monster's War that's available if you sign up on my website. And that's a really fun short story involving that big beast man who we met earlier on. And it's got a lot of action. And so that's a really good, fun place to start. So you can check that out also.
Do we find out how he gets the Was the goddess in the box? The lady in the box?
You sort of. You find out how they meet.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
That's cool. All right. And this has been fantastic. Thank you so much, Nathan. You're welcome back anytime. And we can talk about another book and not talk about the Lord of the Rings. We will, or Dune. We will stay on topic better next time. I promise. It's been a long work day.
Always good to talk about Dune.
I could talk about books all day long. So yeah. So if you like Dan Simmons or if you like Peter F. Hamilton's Void series, then Summoning and Sacrifice might be for you. Mm-hmm. No, I'm going to be getting a copy because I happen to like both of those. Yeah. I might be the target reader.
Yeah, absolutely.
We need to put a little like target symbol over me whenever that happens.
The crosshairs.
Yeah, it's happened a few times. People come on and they're I'm like, really? I think I'm your target reader. Tell me more. Thank you again for coming. Thank you. This has been another episode of Fantasy Lore and More. And today we were talking with Nathan Hartle about Summoning and Sacrifice. And we'll be back with another episode soon with another fantasy author and another fantasy book. Have a great day or a great night, depending on where you are. That'll do it for this episode.